Yeah, I want to talk to you about Mocha. I think it's very fascinating what you guys are doing and coming up here. Before we do, would love to learn a bit more about yourself. If you don't mind sharing a bit about yourself, your story, maybe how you got into the Web3 space.
Yeah, so I've been entrepreneur, startup founder, venture builder basically my whole life, and started with like solar energy, e-commerce, and then data analytics, AI, machine learning, and I was just like busy playing around with my ex-founding team on decentralized VPN, which interestingly is pretty similar to what the technology is pretty similar to what we're doing right now in terms of um, decentralized identity and data storage and so on. Yeah, and I joined Animoca about 3 years ago, and I basically started Moca from zero. And yeah, now here we go, 2.5 years to 3 years.
And tell me about Mocha Network too, because I don't know much about it, but I know that you guys are doing some really good things. What's kind of the core ethos and mission behind what you guys want to do?
Yeah, so the background about Moca Network is basically Animoca, right? And if you look at basically Animoca has been investing in the space since 2017, since the CryptoKitties days, and investing in more than 540 portfolio companies already. A lot of people actually think Animoca is only like investor, but Animoca is actually investor, operator, advisor, and also having strategic projects such as the stablecoin joint venture of Standard Chartered Bank, issuing Hong Kong dollar stablecoin and the other currencies. But the thing is, with all these mass network of distribution, projects, founders, and enterprises, users, investors, and the network, what is actually going to make the network thrive with the network effect, right? Like what is actually common across all these companies and users is basically account, identity, and data. So that's why Mocha Network, the whole ethos about it is connecting, basically becoming that golden thread across like the entire network. Not only Animoca, but how do we open that up for other people to share this network, to build on top? And the most effective way and the most productive way to share network effect is, in our opinion, is through privacy preserve identity and data verification. For example, if you're using the same Google login, same email as the same user, logging into Uber or Foodpanda or like any kinds of apps, you basically those apps don't know who you are except your email address, right? But what if all those data can become interoperable without exposing your raw data and can verify, for example, your Uber rating or how many rides you have or even how much money you have in the bank account in order to maximize your access and rewards across all these apps? That would really create a very fluid and very composable, programmable internet. And we think we have an unfair advantage on distribution with the existing network. And we're not here to compete. We do want to build this network and share it with everyone else.
Yeah, I want to know a bit more about it. I've found it very fascinating, the whole idea of creating some kind of decentralized, secure identity, credentials, securing that data that is often doesn't flow seamlessly to a lot of different applications all at once, or that maybe could be compromised. We see data hacks all the time at a very massive scale, and it impacts people every day. So I think there's a big opportunity in the space to solve that. And I think you guys are kind of on the front end of that. So what do you kind of think the future of this looks like in terms of taking credentials, identity, secure data, putting that on blockchain? What do you think that looks like in the near future?
Yeah, so I do think our approach to digital identity has a very, very complete vision, and not just the vision, but actually the execution, implementation, the design of the solution is very elegant. And I might be biased, but like it's indeed very complete, and in a way that basically our ethos is one day if we don't exist anymore, touch wood, right? Like would the data still exist? Would the user still have access to their data? If a user wants to prove their data to any applications, can they still do it? Right. And that's the whole point of building Mocha Chain is basically having a decentralized identity, truly self-sovereign, that you don't need to rely on any centralized entity in order to prove your data, store your data, and so on. It's really, of course, like the security side on protecting login credentials and all that. We see all the hacks with the 16 billion password being leaked, the Coinbase incident, and so on. But then more importantly as well is how do you make this data interoperable and having all these fragmented identity being unified under a single identity um, without exposing any kinds of raw data and only selecting what you want to share with which app selectively, right? So that's how we were thinking about identity overall.
Do you guys have any use cases on Mocha Chain at this point in time? If so, like what are those kind of starting to look like?
Yeah, and one thing I guess like the philosophy on traffic and distribution. We of course like there are other apps that in Web3 try to build a killer app and hopefully acquiring tens of millions or hundreds of millions of users. But so far, I guess like we've been in a space for more than 10 years now. We haven't really seen a lot of those killer apps. Like we do want to tap into where the traffic is already coming from. And what that means is there are already hundreds of millions of users, tens of millions of users using existing consumer apps. And our product is designed and implemented in a way that can be embedded within existing consumer apps without disrupting existing consumer user experience. So that is our philosophy. And in terms of existing use cases, the largest telecom in Korea, which is the second largest company next to Samsung, already integrated, embedded the account and identity within their largest consumer apps with 28 million KYC users. It's basically half the population in the whole country. One Football is like a football app with 200 million users. Like they're also integrating onboarding. There's like a lot more partners, even genetics company putting genetics data on chain, make it verifiable. If you think about it, like genetics company, let's say it's not 23andMe, but let's use 23andMe as an example, right? The whole moat of the 23andMe business is not people paying for tests. It's basically the data that they have access to that they sell to research companies, pharmaceutical companies, and so on. What if you can give that data ownership back to the user? The user onboarding friction and well, I'm not sure, but I'm not willing to give my DNA data to a centralized company. But what if you can guarantee that the data is only accessible by you and you can choose to expose any kinds of verification by your own choice? Let's say a health supplement companies want to verify your genetics, like cancer marking or like whatever possibility or probability of having cancer and so on. You can proactively choose to generate a zero knowledge proof and present that proof to any companies to verify that, and you can monetize and maximize your benefits and value out of it. That's a really like clear use case, and there's a genetics company working on it, like sports, education, chalkboards. If you just like go on LinkedIn and say that I went to Harvard, like 1969, June 9th is my graduation date, studying computer engineering, like who is there to verify that, right? So with this, once you have a interoperable identity network, let's say a university issuing a education credentials that can be verified by LinkedIn, for instance, and that is truly unifying all the data under the user control, make it verifiable across any apps as long as they integrate with the SDK that we're building.
So this is something that you can make truly universal, that people could take anywhere they want with them, anywhere in the world to interact any way they want eventually. Could this expand out to other forms of identification? Could it be like for a business license or a car license or maybe a title deed? I feel like there's a lot of things that you could tie into this simply by having this universal identity on chain.
Yeah, 100%. So like we have a very flagship identity protocol being deployed on Moca chain called CKMe. It's basically a RegTech company allowing zero knowledge proof KYC. And zero knowledge proof KYC basically allow you to do all this verification, scanning your passport, getting all the raw data, but the raw data is never really exposed to any companies. If you go to centralized KYC provider, they are actually taking all the data. And you're able to generate, for example, you get your date of birth as the raw data. The user basically used their own private key to encrypt the data and generating a proof to anyone who wants to basically configure different rules. I want to verify if that user is over 18, over 21, and so on. And the only data that the verifier is getting is a yes or no. right? And not getting access to the full data. And we see a world, especially now, when you see more securities and assets being tokenized on chain. I just don't see a world where there's like a complete like casino that is fully decentralized and a fully compliant and regulated space on chain. There needs to be a middle ground where you balance decentralization and also compliance regulation at the same time. The likes of DMV, like IDs and so on, like we got other like regional partners actually focusing on working with government on EID, but we are not focusing on that. Like we're focusing on how do you expand the depth of that EID, local government EID, on enriching with different types of data, as a kind of like a cliche way to say that is a customer 360 around the government ID and identity.
Excellent. And what brings you to Permissionless? What are you trying to, is it mostly focused on promoting Moca Network? I know you just did a talk just a little bit ago. Are you guys also looking for partnerships, other companies? What's kind of the main objective for you?
Yeah, so I guess we can all agree that like from a regulation point of view, there's so much more clarity now with this administration. Like we see Genius Act and like other regulation coming out. Like when there is clarity, like people and companies are way more active, way more positive and optimistic, and we have seen a lot of those happening in the U.S. And I would say like building presence is one, and as well as like partnerships, right? Because U.S. is very, very strong on banking financial credentials, especially in New York. And obviously, like in other, let's say California is probably more consumer side of things. But the likes of, for example, Plaid, like basically massive company, valued at $6 billion, I believe, on banking credentials. Like all these companies are massive. Everyone, I believe, everyone, and also in our presentation just now, is all these independent identity issuer and companies need a unification layer that actually able to bootstrap privacy, zero knowledge proof, issuance verification, and compatibility with like all the chains and off chain. So we are providing that to all these companies, and we are able to work with all these companies in the US to become identity issuer on our chain.
Where can people go to learn more about Moca Network? Where would you direct them? Just like the website? Do you have socials? Do you have a community at this point? Where's the best place to go to get more information?
Yeah, so we got a few websites, but the best way to learn about the chain is going to mocachain.org. And we also have what we call the Moca Academy, and we constantly publish like blog articles and so on. And that is moca.network. And on the first page, there's where you can access the Moca Academy and the blog.
Before we wrap up the episode, want to do a quick little fun rapid fire session. I'll ask you a couple quick questions. Just give me your initial response to them, and we'll go from there. The first one being, what are your thoughts on the Genius Act?
To be honest, I think is great. I think almost similar time. Like I actually am based in Hong Kong. Similar time, Hong Kong government also like published a stablecoin act that brings a lot of clarity. I think clarity is great. Like regardless of where the direction is heading towards, clarity is great. But maybe to sidetrack a little bit, one interesting thing is like the Singapore government MAS just announced that like most of the crypto companies are actually illegal. Yeah, so that kind of clarity could be good or bad, but at least there's clarity. People know what to do. Yeah, clarity is clarity. Yeah, I'm like super bullish about stablecoin in general and stablecoin in the US. Yeah.
Do you have a favorite Web3 personality or individual in the space?
Probably not real. I actually have an alter ego called Tyler Durden. Yeah, so Tyler Durden is my Web3 name. It's really like that's my favorite movie, and I do believe myself have like two sides of my personality, and Tyler Durden is really anti-mainstream and anti-consumerism, and I think it's really fitting into Web3 values, right? Like don't like to be told what cannot be done and like make things happen.
Do you have a favorite Web3 startup or company or one that you think is doing some really good stuff in the space?
I actually like what the base team has been doing. And also because it's not easy. I know there's like different criticism on um, like how they approach things, but I actually think balancing the unfair advantage of distribution from Coinbase and balancing Base as a decentralized platform is not easy. And I do think the team and Coinbase as well as a good culture of incubating and empowering employees to start their own companies. So like might not be the answer that you're looking for because yeah, and yeah, like obviously a lot of the other companies that we're working with, for example, like stablecoin infrastructure that we're speaking to them very closely. We're actually like the teams a lot too.
And then last question, what do you think the theme is for this summer? Is it about stable coins? Is it decentralized AI or is it something else?
I do think it's gonna still be stablecoin and payment. And again, I might be biased, but I'm pretty sure digital identity is going to be the main character in the next 6 to 12 months because um, all things actually point to that direction. You cannot really have stablecoin and payment and P2P and not knowing who you're sending to. And stablecoin, the last mile of stablecoin is always like consumer and settlement. So there's a lot of programmability around identity that needs to be done there. So stablecoin payment identity, I do believe are going to be pretty key. And of course, like RWA tokenized securities. I already heard like a lot of tokenized securities that would be happening, so it's definitely going to be pretty huge in the next 6 months.
Excellent. And then, Kenneth, where can people go to get in contact with you, follow you? I know you mentioned an alter ego. Maybe should they follow that one as well?
Yeah, so my X handle is Tyler Durden 88. Yeah, so Tyler Durden 88 is my X account.
Awesome, Kenneth. Really appreciate the conversation today. Love what you guys are doing with Moca Network. I think the whole idea behind credentialing and identity on blockchain is crucial for the space going forward. So keep up all the good work and keep me up to date on what you guys are doing. Would love to do another episode in the near future and hear more about the ecosystem building out and more use cases and things that kind of come to light over the course of your roadmap. So thank you for the time today. Appreciate it.
Awesome. Thank you. Very excited.